In this video, I'll be explaining how the burned, stunned, corrosive, blinded, and jamming status ailments affect enemy NPCs. Some of these status ailments affect players in ways that they don't affect NPCs, especially with blinded and jamming. I'll be going over all of the status ailments, how they work together, and some fun use case scenarios for some of them on specific bosses as well. Spoiler alert, jamming does not work on NPCs. It just doesn't work at all. They'll still fire missiles at you. They'll still hit you with melee. They'll still fire their guns at you. They'll still, if you jam and then walk in front of them or around them, they're still going to see you. It just does not have any effect. I've tried it on many different enemy types. No go. Additionally, the Icarus missile launcher claims in its description that it sprays acid on direct hits. It does not. This is probably a bug, and it will likely be fixed in the next patch or two. But it does not do acid damage under any circumstances. It is missing in its specialist parameters at the bottom. It's missing its acid stats. The Rampage Hammer is a fire missile, and you can see it's got burn values and attribute saturation values for that status ailment, and the Icarus is missing it completely. Hopefully that comes in the next patch and we get to see it in its full glory. But for now, Icarus is bugged, and it does not work as described. With that being said, it still does pretty respectable damage if you still want to use it just because it looks cool. Now, fire, when it comes to fighting NPCs, fire is essentially just a damage over time effect, for the most part. There are some special interactions, such as Dreadnought being incapable of burrowing whenever it's on fire, but for the most part, enemies will act as normal when they're on fire. The stamina drain doesn't seem to come into play for most enemies. It's mostly just a damage over time effect. You can apply it pretty frequently. After fire is applied, it will run for a certain amount of time depending on the enemy's fire resistance, and then it can't be applied again for 15 seconds. After 15 seconds, you can proc it again, but in that meantime, they're in that 15-second window, they are immune to the ailment. Now, both fire and acid are not damage attributes, they're status ailments. If you use a weapon such as a flamethrower or an acid thrower, they're going to inflict basic damage with some physical damage. Acid and fire are not separate damage groups. That's just the ailment that those weapons cause. And arc guns are energy damage. The corroded and burned status effects are both very similar in that each of them applies a damage over time effect, but the corroded status effect also applies a defense debuff, which makes your other weapons hit the enemy harder while they're affected by corrosion. Corroded can only be applied to enemies 30 seconds after the previous corroded effect ended, unlike burned, which can be applied after 15 seconds. So that is one big downside, but the defense debuff really kind of makes up for it. Now, unlike other games where one status ailment may override another, both the burned and corroded status effects can stack, and the damage over time effects will stack too. How effective this is will depend on the resistances of the particular enemy you're fighting, however. Enemies affected by multiple ailments will have the icon above their head blink to show which ailments they are affected by. Now this is just a demonstration of the corroded ailment's defense debuff in action. Without corrosion, the Hypnos takes 25 damage on average, 41 on crit from the spear. Once the corroded effect is applied, that damage jumps up to 33. That's about a 35% increase. On some enemies, I've seen this jump up over 100%. Now for stun, oh boy. Stun is much more niche than the other status ailments in that it takes a minute between each stun proc. Once the stun is proc, it will be down for 3 seconds, and then it takes a minute before you can possibly proc it again. That's a pretty long time for combat in this game, but there is still use for it, especially that first stun, because those 3 seconds can be pretty critical for setting up a follow-up stagger or something to maybe break key parts off of certain bosses, things like that. But it's not something that you're going to be able to exploit very regularly. Now, the blinded ailment needs absolutely no explanation, but I'm going to give you one anyways. If you blind an enemy, the blinded enemy will blindly attack where it last saw you. Now, if you blind an enemy that's not alerted to your presence, instead of attacking blindly, it will just stand there menacingly. Now, I said in the beginning of the video that jamming just does not work on NPCs, but that's not entirely true. It does one thing. If an enemy NPC has voice dialogue, they will acknowledge through voice lines that they have been jammed. That's the only effect that I've been able to make happen. I have tried everything. If this is what I got.
My display, field burst. My display, field burst. My display, field burst. My display.
Yeah, so that's jamming in a nutshell. But back to fun interactions with the ailments that actually work. If you apply fire and or corrosive to Arachne, she can't stealth. Yeah, she tries to disappear, and then the damage over time effect hurts her, and that knocks her out of stealth, and she can't hide from you. And so you can just bully her relentlessly. It's great fun. Give it a shot. And Gearworm is probably the funniest interaction I've found with the status ailments so far. He's immune to fire, but he's susceptible to corrosive. And while he's affected by corrosion, he will not do anything else but run to this pool of water and desperately try to wash it off. So you can just beat the tar out of him while he does that. And then he just kind of breaks a little bit. He doesn't really attack. He doesn't immediately try to hack. He just kind of runs around and stops and just, yeah, it completely breaks him. It's hilarious. Give it a shot. Now, there are some special interactions with specific world bosses, such as the Dreadnoughts being unable to burrow into the ground while they're on fire, but I can't detail them all here because I'm really trying to keep these videos to like around the 10-minute mark. But I do hope that this video was helpful and informative, and if you stuck around until the end, look forward to my next video, which will showcase one of the most powerful weapon types in the game.